Hi everyone, this is Andrew Fuge with the Rockland Arts Festival. I'm joined today by artist Robin Kline. Good morning, Robin. I'm going to ask you to talk about your inspiration and your process for not only the piece that you've submitted for the festival, but your work in general.
Good morning, Andrew. So nice to see you, and thank you for including me in the Rockland Arts Festival. I am first and foremost a potter. I don't generally use the word ceramic artist because it's really clay that I have a love affair with, and I don't really care about labels. So actually first fell in love with clay when I saw someone throwing a pot on the wheel, and it looked completely magical to me. And now, probably at least 40 years after that first viewing, it's still magical to me. I just love making pots. I love the way it feels, and I love being able to create things with it that say something about who I am and what I care about. So, as most potters do, I started by making routine forms like mugs and bowls and pictures and those kinds of things. And but for me, the most important part of that is the elegance of the form. I don't just like straight out cylindrical forms. They just leave me cold. I like them to have that perfect curve and that perfect profile, and the mug to feel good in your hand. And I love when friends and former customers come see me at festivals and say, I use your mug every day. I have my cereal in your bowl. And it makes me feel a part of their lives. And it also, as someone who also loves cooking and feeding friends and family, I like the notion that it helps turn a meal into a ritual, a shared ritual. And it elevates it in our lives. And I think we need to do that. We need to elevate the commonplace and to really savor them, those moments. I wanted to share sort of the philosophy I share with students, and I just taught a brand new group of beginners on Saturday. And there are three things I tell them. The first is to learn to accept loss. That when you're working in clay, you can lose it at any stage, and you have to go with it. You have to just sort of learn to accept that and to move forward. The second is that it's humbling. That yes, you're working on developing your skills, but you're never completely in charge. It's a dialogue with the clay. And the third is to keep in mind that it's about the process, not the product. And I think those philosophies can teach us a lot about how to live our lives as well. So it certainly helped me to grow. So there's that. And in addition, so I've told you a little bit about what I care about with the form, and there's the surface. And I approach the surface in a lot of different ways. One, I use a lot of color. I don't know if you can see that bowl on the top shelf well, but I do these series of painted bowls that I know what my palette is, but what happens in the kiln is a little bit of a mystery. And I love that. I love that, again, the element of surprise, the sitting back and accepting that there are things beyond my control, but I can steer things. I like to carve on surfaces, and the inspiration pattern, or really patterns in nature, things like the beautiful bark of a tree. When you go hiking, if you look at the trees, they're all a little different, and they all have this wonderful character. Or if you're on the beach, and the pattern of that the tide leaves in the sand, to me, is always spectacular. So I've tried to use those kinds of themes and inspirations in some of my work. And one of the other things I like to do to the clay is to alter it. To really take clay that's dry enough to withstand pressure, but wet enough to move with my hand. And that gives me a sense of what I also call, let me step back for a minute. You know, when you're making something in clay, it's very organic, it's moving, it's changing shape as you're working with it. And that's really exciting and fun. And when you look at finished products, they're just completely static. They are what they are. Their form is fixed in time, and that's what they will always be. And that dichotomy always troubled me a little bit. So part of my altering forms is an attempt to show a little bit of the process in the finished piece. And I refer to that as movement and stillness. So the piece that's in the show is really kind of a descendant of a number of other themes I've been working on. A number of years ago, bud vases, I looked at bud vases, which I love to make. Every single one is different, and they're just beautiful forms that can be rounder or taller or thinner, but they have a neck and a body, and to me seem to be anthropomorphic. So I started altering these bottles and calling them people bottles initially. I have a small one over here on the shelf. My assistant is getting it for me. So this is an altered value. You can see it's small. It has that feeling of movement in it, and it kind of has feet and an attitude with its neck. And I've played with that quite a bit. And that theme I played with in much larger pieces. I don't have any of them nearby to show you. They're a little cumbersome to do that with. But I have a very large series of work that you can find in my website, on my website in the sculptural ceramic section, called gestural bottles. And those tend to be about just under 2 feet tall, some a little bit smaller. And they each have been altered to reflect a different attitude. So I have one that I call seductive woman, another one I call attitude. And they reflect emotions, and they look like they're going to talk to each other at some point. So that's kind of a fun direction for me. I then took that even further, had a couple of very profound life experiences that I then processed in different of my sculptural work, different pieces. And so I have a couple of sculptures that I made after an experience with breast cancer. And I used a technique called kintsugi, which is using gold in a crack or break, because the philosophy behind kintsugi values flaws.
Mm-hmm.
And I started using kintsugi because 2 forms that I love, broke in the firing, and I said, I'm going to save these. And that's how I started using them. And I loved the way it looked. And so I now do some intentional kintsugi, where if the theme of the piece, I want to show that there was some kind of breakage or hurt, I cut it before I fire it, and then I fill it with gold afterwards. So they become this way of externalizing emotions.
Yeah.
And that's been a wonderful experience. Well, things are pretty good in life right now. And I started thinking, well, what do I want to work on now? And so I started this series, the pieces in the show. Let me make sure you can see it. You can see these 2 vases here. I can't hold them up. Just going to be, okay. Okay. And they are 2 vases. They're separate. They're made to fit together. And that's the beginning of this series that I'm still working on, called Made for Each Other,
Mm-hmm.
where I think it says a lot about loving relationships, right? They have to be separate for their individual integrity. But that fitting together, finding the point where they fit together, is what creates that closeness and relationship, and something that's different, right? You
Yep.
connect to each other, they look like they're joined, and it's a whole different form, but yet they have their independence. So I think that speaks to a loving relationship between partners, and I've been exploring that more. I've got, they started with the kind I showed you, and I have a whole series of them in process right now. And the most recent ones are large gestural bottles that nest to each other. So I'm trying to combine these 2 concepts a little bit. And that's where, and at the same time, I'm making silly things for fun. I'm an animal lover, and I started making cat pots at the Cat Mug. I'll have those at the festival in Palisade Center. I'll have some of those and cat plates, and they're just fun. They're fun to make, and that's part of what I think it's important to remember as an artist. Sometimes you feel very serious and very intellectual about it, and sometimes you just want to play.
Robin, that's great. Thank you so much. Really interesting to learn your philosophy, and particularly to get an insight on some of the technical issues that you deal with the pottery. Thank you for being a participant in the festival, and we look forward to seeing you at the Palisade Center.
Thank you very much.